Welcome to another episode of Up2. 9 years ago, Up2 started as a live event series showcasing leaders who are as humble as they are successful. The humility piece is extremely important as we identify leaders who can inspire others. We try to focus our interviews on the non-business aspects of their lives. And in doing so, we have found there's a real thirst to explore their hearts and minds in atypical ways. Our host, as always, is Adam Kaufman. And on this episode, we are joined by David Ciccone.
During the first season of the Up2 podcast, I had several companies and entrepreneurs approach me about potential partnerships, but I'm really selective before choosing to do something like that. One choice we did make, happily, is to partner with Vivid Front, a full-service digital marketing and website design agency based in Cleveland that works with both local and national brands. They've built their entire client base on referrals, and they've won a lot of awards, including the 2019 Inc. magazine Top 5,000 Fastest Growing Companies, North Coast's Top Places to Work, and several others. They're known for their talent, they're known for their creativity, they're known for their culture, a firm I liked before we agreed to partner together for the show. Check out vividfront.com, or you can email me and I'll introduce you to their dynamic leader, Andrew Spott. Our guest today is the founder and the managing director of the CTH Group, private wealth advisory group affiliated with Wells Fargo. David has been advising now hundreds of affluent and ultra-high net worth families for 3 decades, and his select clients count on David and his team to help them with their most important life decisions. Impressively, David's group is responsible for managing more than $1 billion. I want to talk to him about what it's like if he feels any pressure with that. I have seen firsthand how David has earned the trust of these extremely discerning and private families, and I'm really looking forward to delving into today how he earns that trust. It is such a valuable and rare commodity, and I'm also looking forward to picking David's brain a little on his observations about the common traits of these very successful people with whom he spends so much time. David is also very civic-minded, dedicating much of his time and energy to a very special organization called Communities in Schools. And he's passionate about good food, optimal health, and traveling too. He splits his time between the Washington, D.C. area and Naples, Florida, and we're fortunate to have him with us today in studio in the new home of Up2. David, welcome to the Up2 podcast. What have you been up to?
Oh, thank you, Adam. Well, first and foremost, congratulations to you and Up2 for your 4th season. Unbelievable.
Thank you.
I'm beyond humbled to be invited into this pantheon of humble and accomplished guests. So I appreciate it very much. I hope I can share some good things with for your listeners today.
I have no doubt you will. So what have you been up to? I think you flew in just to be with us here. You spent a lot of the winter months in Florida, but what have you been up to?
Absolutely. So, we've transitioned. We were in a prior firm. We were with a Swiss bank originally. We transitioned our entire team over, and it was quite a difficult process to get the assets, over $1 billion in assets transferred over from our old firm to our new firm.
And you did that during the pandemic.
Through COVID, yeah.
Right.
That's the interesting part. We were able to somehow manage to effectively make this work without even being able to meet with clients.
Wow.
But that'll all tie in later in this podcast. But I'll just say up front that I think part of that is really a testament to my team and just a level of trust and confidence that we've tried to instill with our clients. And that's probably going to be the thread that permeates this entire podcast
today.
today.
Well, you have your threads, and I have some I want to go down as well. So I'm sure we'll have plenty of good things to talk about. We will talk about your team. But first, can you explain to me, to the group listening, what's the day in the life of a wealth manager? What does that even mean? Like, how do you spend your time?
Sure. No, that's great. Well, as you can imagine, our role and our occupation. We serve as so many things to clients. Frankly, I find myself sometimes I'm a psychologist to some folks. I'm a family counselor, wealth manager, real estate advisor, you name it.
You've earned the trust. That's
exactly,
what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I tend to say when I first meet with a potential client or somebody that's interviewing us, I tell them, look, at the end of the day, anything with a dollar sign, you're probably over time going to call us first. And if you really have a good, solid relationship with any financial advisor for that matter, that's really what the relationship's all about, right? It's when you have a question about something, you call the person that you trust the most on a particular subject.
Yeah, right.
If you have a legal problem, you call your lawyer. If you have a medical problem, you call your doctor. So for us, it's just, Adam, it's so broad-based, it's unbelievable. But a day in the life might be, it starts early in the morning, seeing what's going on in the overseas markets.
I know you texted me before 6 this morning. I hope you don't mind me sharing.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's probably a little late, actually.
It's midday for you.
Yeah. So, the markets are always moving, obviously. There's a lot of things that are happening overseas. We try to get a little bit of a pulse on what's going on in the Asian markets, European, wherever we might be looking at different things. But the bottom line is, that's the starting point. And the interesting thing about being a financial advisor is everybody seems to think that the only thing we do is pick stocks, right, trade stocks. And to be perfectly honest with you, what I've found in 28 years of trading and doing professional money management, it's actually probably the last thing we think about.
Huh, isn't that interesting? It's funny. It's funny that you said you're part psychologist, because I don't know if anyone's ever told you this, but you are one of the most empathetic human beings I've ever been around. You have the real intuition for understanding people, even if there's no verbal exchange. I've noticed this over time, and I have many examples. But I don't know if you've ever thought about your own empathy or if anyone's ever said that to you, but it's a real talent.
Right, thank you. I don't know where it comes from. I think some people are just naturally empathetic, and they use that skill or inherent characteristic to really try to do good things with it. I personally always try to see things from other people's perspective.
Yes.
And I really do try to embrace that sort of, sincere, my father always said, just be honest, care about people, do the right thing, and good things will come to you. And I really do feel that that's the way things have worked out in my adult life. So.
I mean, those sound like such basic tenets. Like, why wouldn't everyone do that? But they really are rare.
Right.
Not just in your industry, but all over the marketplace.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful your dad ingrained that in your head. It's even better that you accepted that advice and you're actually carrying it out. And I know it affects the culture you've created with your team and your coworkers. But let's back up. Since you did mention your father, like what type of family were you born into?
Sure. Great question. Well, the Dave Ciccone story all starts with two humble people who came in from overseas, came from Europe in the 50s on the SS Constitution. Two separate. My mother came, a couple years after my father came. They didn't know each other.
One from Spain.
One from Italy. My father from Italy. My mother from Spain. Things in Europe were not particularly good economically.
Post-World War II, Western Europe.
Exactly. I mean, I can share some stories that'll blow your mind of what I saw when I was a kid. But, basically just fast forward a little bit through a sequence of events. My parents met each other, and, they just...
In the Washington, D.C. area?
Washington, D.C., yeah, exactly.
I actually do like going backwards a little bit. So your parents' humble beginnings. You did shock me once telling me how modest an upbringing they had and visiting your grandparents and what type of... Because we're going to spend time talking today about how professionally successful you've become, but I think it's really remarkable that in just 2 generations' time, where it was in your family to where it is now.
Right,
so can you give us a snapshot
of
that pre-you Ciccone time?
Yeah, well, we're going way back in the time machine, but it's interesting you ask. When I think about it, Adam, when I go back, I mean, I'm in my 50s now, so when I look back at the times when I was a child, went and visit my grandparents' home, my parents, homes when they were young, I mean, it was mind-boggling how it's just a whole different experience than what we live in these days, what my children are able to experience every day. But I mean, I'll give you an example. little village where both my parents lived, my father in Italy and my mother in Spain. No running water, no indoor plumbing. I'm not kidding. You know, cook, well, let's see. You light a fire in this fireplace thing in what they call a kitchen, boil water.
And you went back to visit
Yeah, I
these
went
humble
many
homes.
times as a child. You know, my father, well, both my parents really, one of the things they really tried to instill in us is culture. It's learning about people and culture and,
Heritage.
you know, a little bit of travel and seeing things through other people's viewpoints. But I mean, I'll give you 2 examples. I mean, we literally in this little town, I remember in my mother's village, I don't know if it was a horse, a mule, a donkey, some large 4-legged creature. Literally, at the end of the day, they would bring this beast through a hallway, through the front door, to a room in the back of my grandparents' home. And
Wasn't for riding for the kids.
no, that was the workhorse. That's where the horse would be I mean, literally inside the house, you know. And I'll go one step further. That was actually, remember, there was no indoor plumbing.
Right.
So I'm talking, you know, very, very different, very humble beginnings. And, you know, my parents' parents wanted their children to have a better life. And they did what they had to do to try to get my folks over to the United States. You know, all the dreams of the American dream. I mean, I literally saw it in real time. I've experienced
Right.
this.
I just find it tremendous that in 2 generations we went from having a Ciccone family working mule
Right.
to you picking me up in a McLaren that goes 200 miles an hour.
Yeah, I mean, that's
in less than 70 years that's occurred, that change.
Yeah, American dream. I mean, I'll tell you, you know, I remember this is crazy. I don't know, you remember certain things when you're a kid. I remember my grandmother walking in with this, hope the vegans don't take offense to this.
We're always going to offend somebody no matter what we say.
All right. Well, there was no PETA.
Be authentic.
There's no PETA back then in Spain.
People for the ethical treatment of animals.
Correct.
Right.
My grandmother walks in with a little cute white bunny, you know, and I'm sitting there thinking, oh, wow.
New pet.
Yeah, new pet. My grandmother bought us a pet, you know. And my mother starts laughing. She says, David, no, that's not a pet. That's dinner. And
how old do you think you were then? That could be like shocking for a young
I was
boy.
5-6 years old.
my
But I mean,
gosh.
you know, I mean, it's just such an incredibly distinct sort of reality, you know?
Yeah.
And
in your timeline of life, like I went back to the village where my ancestors are from in Lebanon.
Yeah.
And the simple life that they not only led but still lead, it's more advanced than it used to be, but it's nowhere near what we're used to here in America.
Exactly.
It is just such a stark reminder at how different people can be in this one world that we live in.
Right.
It's not like just the olden days where we're eating rabbit, or in my neighborhood, you know, everything they ate, they grew on their own property.
Yeah.
In my ancestors' neighborhood in Lebanon.
Well, even just, you know, communication, making a phone call from these locations at that time when I was a kid, literally you got 1 hour, not us, meaning the whole town, got 1 hour of telephone time
Access.
on Sunday evenings. I remember this. I don't know how I remember all this stuff so far back, but 6 p.m. you had to be at the town sort of center, the town square. There'd be a line. And, you know, because not everybody necessarily had to make phone calls that, you know, not everybody in the town
But all week you knew that was your time, so you maybe would call America on Sunday.
That's, you know, the way it always worked.
Now it's like this paralysis of choice. We have, like, should I be on LinkedIn or Signal or Twitter? Or there's so many options. WhatsApp, go on and on.
Yeah, and that's probably something we'll chat about a bit deeper into this podcast. But, you know, just it's such a stark contrast. That's really just, and how it relates back to how the whole Dave Ciccone story started. It basically comes back to, I saw what my parents were sort of leaving and what they were going to, and I always felt like they really thought about all the things they wanted to provide for me and for my siblings. I'm always just I'm amazed when we go on the topics of immigration and things like, not to digress, but I think at the root of most good people, they just want to do the right thing for their families.
Yes.
They want to provide a better life for their children.
Right.
And I think that's the essence of the American dream, revolves around that.
And you're definitely doing that, and I see how you are with your family. We'll get into that a little bit, but let's now move forward to your professional life.
Sure.
And you've built this tremendous team. You're one of the most, your team is one of the largest groups on the East Coast in terms of wealth management, if not the whole country. And I wondered if you could share a little bit about the types of CEOs that you've earned as clients, or leaders of large private companies, executives in public companies, even some mega millionaire winners, lottery winners, that maybe have a different character trait from the other folks I was describing. So can you talk in general terms about this somewhat unique and interesting client base you have?
Sure, absolutely. So,
I mean, I say in general, you can name names if you want to, but I figured you wouldn't want to.
Yeah, we'll keep the names confidential, but
right.
It's
senators.
Sure. It's funny, Adam, but I've had the opportunity, again, coming from what I consider to be pretty humble beginnings. It's amazing going from
It really is.
one place to sitting at a table with the royal family in the Middle East, or with CEOs, as you mentioned, of major Fortune 50 companies in the United States, politicians, you name it. We've really somehow we've managed to earn the trust of a lot of people. But there's such unique characteristics between a lot of different folks. I typically found that CEOs are fairly decisive. And you have to really earn their trust, because they're in control, right? They control a lot of things.
They're used to like writing a memo and everyone does whatever they say.
Exactly.
Right.
But in our profession and what we provide to clients has to be a little bit different, because I've always found you have to tell people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. And I've used that as kind of one of the mantras with my team, which is, if a client needs to hear something, we need to tell them.
I call that diplomatic assertiveness.
That's right.
You can be diplomatic and not assertive, and they won't get it.
Sure.
But if you're too assertive, it might turn off these CEOs.
Right.
So when I call on folks like this, I call it diplomatic assertiveness.
Yep. Well, what I've found, over the years, and that's exactly right.
Yeah.
But what a lot of people, again, they come in and they maybe want to, make the decisions on a lot of things. But at the end of the day, they have to recognize that we provide a pretty valuable service.
You guys are the experts.
We're the professionals. We've been doing it for a long time. We've seen everything. And again, the whole mantra of telling them what they need to hear. In some cases, we do deal with folks with a lot of wealth, so it's not generally based around you're spending too much. It's more based around the fact that maybe getting a little bit too deep into speculative activity. Or
can you give me like a real example, like not naming a person, but like what's some tough advice you needed to diplomatically, with assertiveness, explain to somebody?
Sure. No, that's well, I mean, I could go down the litany of many cases where we've dealt with those issues, but I'll go to, you mentioned the lottery winners. The Mega Millions lottery winners.
That's different than a CEO who's been working through an executive chain
that's
for years.
A whole nother
How on earth did you get
conversation.
into? You're like the wealth manager for the Mega Millionaires.
Yeah. Well,
how does that come about?
Well, I guess fortunately we have a decent reputation in the business of asset management, and attorneys and estate planners and accountants, they recognize our name, our group name. So, they know that we tend to be able to handle really complicated cases, and again, kind of the word gets out. So we got our very first Mega Millions lottery winner, maybe, I don't know, must have been 12, 13 years ago. That's a whole story on its own. I can go into that if you want. But, these folks have never had the kind of wealth that drops into their lap. We had a Mega Millions lottery winner that won $47 million from $350 a week salary to $47 million basically in one shot.
It must be so hard to pull back the reins on their newfound wealth. And
Adam, oh my, the stories I could tell.
tell us a story.
Well, so
I mean, we're here to tell stories.
All right, well, we'll tell a story. So I'll tell you one. So let's talk. So first, the lead-in. One particular client, Houston, Texas. They're driving home from Houston to a small town about 2 hours away out of Houston. They stop at a gas station. The husband hops out of the car, gives his wife a $20 bill, says to his wife, "Go in, you buy the lottery tickets, and the routine generally was, it was $2 of tickets and $18 for gas."
Okay.
All right. She walks in.
I've never done that before.
Well, I've seen a lot of winners.
Yeah.
I play to win, I guess.
Okay, yeah.
She goes into the gas station. The cashier, instead of giving her 2 tickets, does 20 tickets. Okay, so the full $20 worth of tickets. Now, recognize that with the Mega Millions, they're not scratch-offs. You can't just hand them back if they give you too many. They actually spit out of a machine. Numbers are
So now
posted.
they're used.
It's you pay for it, they print it, it's yours. You have to take it. You can't do anything about it. So, there's a little bit of a back and forth. She really, doesn't want 20. She
Can't afford
she
it
wants
all,
to.
probably.
Right.
Yeah.
Walks out, tells her husband, he gave us 20 tickets, and he says, "I don't have any other money. That's what I have, and I don't, this guy made $350, like I said, a week. Didn't have a credit card, didn't have anything." And so back in there, all kinds of rigmarole transpires. He goes in, he has to leave his driver's license at the gas
He's leaving
station.
without paying for the gas.
Yeah, he's got, $18 worth of gas and no money.
Oh, my Lord.
So drives home, they go through that whole process of coming back to bring the gas station some money. And now the husband and wife, they're arguing the whole time.
Yeah. How
right?
could you do this?
How could you? I mean, look, when money's tight,
Yeah, it's her fault.
Right. It causes issues with people. So that whole conflict transpired. They told me it was like a multi-day argument because it was so embarrassing. They had to drive back and forth. Long story short, one of those 20 lottery tickets won them $47 million.
Wow.
So.
Unbelievable. That's like a movie. I feel like I just watched a movie.
Right. Well, I have plenty of others like that. I won't bore you with all
So
of
then
them.
they come to you through a referral from a attorney or an
Always.
accountant or something
Always.
like that.
Yeah. Our entire practice is all referrals. It's all individuals.
And do you still have a relationship with this couple that argued at the gas station?
No. Interesting story. So occasionally there's a little bit of tough love involved in our occupation.
Yes.
So when you have $47 million dump into people's laps, a lot of things can happen.
Sure.
And in this particular case, which is the case for many, many other facets of folks who acquire a lot of money really quickly that didn't necessarily work for it specifically, or it can throw things really off kilter. And in this particular case, I mean, we did everything humanly possible, along with a team of accountants and lawyers and other people. And ultimately, the couple ended up getting divorced, and a lot of really bad things happened as a result of that. But that was a prime example of where we can do all the work that we're trained to do. Manage the money properly. Set everything up perfectly for their futures.
Estate plan for the kids.
Estate plan. I mean, everything from top to bottom.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole team, the financial team and the legal team, we did an amazing job of putting everything together.
I'm sure.
When the client decides that they want to go in a different direction, you have to just kind of let them go.
So unlike that Bonnie and Clyde type of couple that I feel like I'm, again, watching a movie, hearing you talk about it. I know that you've had a lot of clients that have stayed with you for a long time, and I know about this transition you just made to Wells Fargo, and I don't think you lost a single client. What can you say about your own relationship skills? I think this speaks to relationship skills. It's not about the stocks that are picked or the estate plan that's written, I don't think. I think it's about your empathy and the culture that your team has. So can you talk a little bit about why you think you're so good at cultivating relationships?
Well, I don't know if I would say that I'm that great at it.
Yeah,
But
I know,
guess
but that's your humble side. This show is about humble people, and you are humble. So that's me saying this. So
thank you, Al.
React to my question, even if you don't believe it.
Sure. So, again, it kind of goes back to my parents. I try to view people through the prism of what if they were my parents? What would I want an advisor to do for them? What would I really, as their son, what would I like to see a professional relationship look like in the context of how they might assist my own family? And that's how I approach every single case that we handle.
Kind of like do unto others as you would want done to you.
Exactly.
I mean, it's as basic as that,
it's
the golden
what
rule.
comes around goes around.
Right.
If you do the right thing, good things happen. And giving people good advice. And my whole team. The truth is, Adam, the whole team embraces that concept. It's like it's
serving others.
Yeah, it's just our philosophy, which is it's funny. We rarely talk about money. We within the team itself, and we can go into that, when you want to. But we don't talk about how much do we make from a particular case. We talk about what do we need to do to help these people accomplish their goals.
Growth and problem solving.
Really, and it's also aspirational, because a lot of the folks that we tend to manage capital for and do our work for, again, they're already affluent. But they may not necessarily, they may have been so consumed with their careers or whatever the case is that they haven't gone out on the boundaries a little bit to actually really understand what they can accomplish with their wealth, whether it's charitable, philanthropic, whether it's, just things that they just hadn't thought about.
That's technical, though. I want to really delve into your relationship skills.
Sure.
If I might. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just think you're really good at relationships. And even during COVID, I see how you maintain these really hard to get to relationships with people that have a lot of layers between them and the public. So do you think that was like self-taught, or did you have any mentors to teach you how to cultivate and maintain relationships? Because even during the pandemic, I mean, you've been really good at the relationships.
Thank you. I've spent many years of my life just observing, watch, listen, learn.
That's the humble you.
Well, I think there's a lot to learn from people, and I've been involved with people, and I just watch and just learn that those folks who truly, they really care, and it's not a care because there's something that's going to come back to them from it, but they really just give of themselves. I've really found that there's a certain peace that you get from it personally. And, frankly, you're rewarded for it in the long run because of the simple fact that people are willing to share you with their friends, their family, their neighbors, and things like that, because they trust you. They're able to allow you to move into their circle, so to speak, without fear that we're in it to get something from them.
Well, I think you're such a good listener, and people want to be heard. Whatever they do in life, they want to be heard.
Right.
And oftentimes, we're not even solving their problem if we're just listening to them.
Right.
But they're grateful we just listened and gave them space to verbally meander.
Yeah.
Or our mutual friend, Philippe Bourguignon, calls it meandering,
Right.
mentally meandering. And you and I met, our mutual friend, Ambassador Doug Holliday, sat you next to me at a dinner.
One of my favorite people with one of my favorite people.
And that was, I think, 6 or 7 years ago now. And someone like him, he has 1 million wealth managers around him.
Right.
But this is like a perfect example of, and I guess I just spoke about him working with you, but he wouldn't mind. And over all these years, you've continued to earn the trust. He refers others to you. I mean, this is a real trait that I think is rare in society today. And I hear from so many listeners of this show who are in the beginning of their careers.
Right.
And this seems like no big deal maybe to you. Oh, I just listen and I'm empathetic. But this is a really a mentoring moment, what you're describing here. Do you ever think about, Dave, like who's watching you? Do you ever think, I know you're still young, but I mean, your legacy is underway now.
Sure.
Do you ever think about who's watching you?
Oh, absolutely.
Who do you think's watching you?
Well, I mean, my children, for one.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants to earn their children's or keep their children's respect.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it just always comes back to if you're doing the right thing. And
how do you think you're doing in that? Are you earning their respect?
I sure hope so.
If I had
not on every subject,
but if I had your daughter and your son with me right now, not you, and I asked your children, what do you think is most important to your father? What do you think they'd tell me?
I almost can unequivocally say they know they're the most important thing to me. I mean,
Awesome.
Pretty much everything, my family, my parents, my kids, it's really everything I do is really for them, and my clients, perhaps as well. But I think they all look to me and my team and, the folks that I'm associated with for guidance and for somebody they can trust, just somebody honest in this vast sea of people that are, particularly with the folks that we tend to deal with. There's always...
Oh, so we're not talking about, I'm sorry, we're now not talking about your kids. You're talking about your clients?
Yeah, well, first, my kids will say, they're the most important thing to me. They know that just flat out. And I know they would say that.
I've asked other people that question, and they say they admit that wouldn't be the answer. Mm-hmm. But I've seen how you've been living your life, and I'm fairly certain as well that your children would say that about you.
Yeah, I don't even classify that as a humble response. I just classify it as a truthful.
It's not bragging when it's the truth.
Yeah.
It's not bragging when it's
the
true.
First thing that comes to my mind. It's just not even something that I think twice about.
I'm grateful that Calfee, Halter, and Griswold has once again agreed to partner with us. With offices in Ohio and Washington, D.C., this full-service national law firm focuses on all aspects of business and the law, including corporate and finance, intellectual property, and government relations. Let me be clear. I actually approach companies with whom I would like to partner. We just don't accept marketing dollars from anyone. I have been referring my CEO and entrepreneur friends to Calfee for years. I really believe in the firm. One of their notable practice areas is in mergers and acquisitions. And recently, for instance, I introduced a successful entrepreneur in the Midwest to Calfee when he told me that a European-based conglomerate wanted to buy his business. Calfee works with large corporations as well as privately held companies throughout the U.S. and Canada and in Europe and Asia too. So whether it's selling your own business or the more routine needs of creating your first will or anything in between, this firm can really do it all in terms of legal needs. Once again, the firm is Calfee, Halter, and Griswold, and you can find them at calfee.com or on the Up2 Foundation website. I don't know how much you think about this, but have you had any rough patches during COVID for your own life? We're not talking about clients right now. We're not talking about team, although maybe it could affect team or clients. But loneliness is a very real thing, and I know you have a very full life. But I have some very vibrant leaders in my world who I know have had some rough patches.
Sure.
How have you been doing during this extended protocol of stay at home or traveling less, et cetera? I mean, you're a global traveler usually.
Sure.
How have you been doing?
Yeah, no, I know it's so challenging for so many people. It's a terrible thing for those folks whose livelihoods are directly impacted. It's fascinating because we've got this, and I'll answer your question more directly in a second, but I have been fortunate to be in this strata of individuals who've thrived through this COVID scenario.
Right. You almost feel bad
right.
whenever we're cranky. I know I do, because so many people have it so much worse.
Right. And really the nature of my profession is I'm on the phone. I'm having conversations with people. And for me, that really hasn't changed much. I like to be with people. I'm a people person, and I'd rather be with people in person. Not traveling has been highly, highly unusual for me. I was on a plane literally every week for God knows how long.
Offshore as well.
Everywhere, just, meeting with clients and developing relationships and so forth. But so that's a little bit odd.
Yeah.
But, the whole COVID thing, I've actually tried to make the best of it. I've been able to spend time with my kids, which I was not able to spend as much time. And when you go to an office every day and your children go to school, well, that's about an 8-hour window that you're not together.
Right.
But I was so fortunate, how I dealt with it. My son, my 15-year-old son, literally sat next to me for months because he didn't have to go to school.
That's definitely a silver lining in all this.
And the schedule were consolidated, so they only, they had school a couple of days a week, 3 days a week, whatever it is. And he would sit down with me and just observe what I do, which is what I used to do, which is watch, learn, and listen. And I told my son, Max, I said, just watch, learn, and listen.
Think of the impact you're having on him right now with this unexpected bonus time. Yeah. Even if it's not verbalized, just he'll see how you behave or how you deal with a stressful moment or a problem in some way.
Yeah, I think he's grown a lot. My daughter's off at Virginia Tech, so she's in college, so I don't get to have that same experience with her. But, I've just found us just getting closer together. I work out with my son now every day because, again, we're home, right?
Right.
So
more time together.
Again, for me, the COVID situation has not been quite as traumatic or dramatic.
You have had to deal with an unexpected curve in the road, if you don't mind me saying. I know you've had a recent physical problem not related to the virus.
Right.
How are you doing with that? And if you want to share it all,
sure.
Anything about what's going on?
Yeah. So I shattered my calcaneus. To those who aren't familiar with anatomy,
which is everybody is unfamiliar with that.
So the calcaneus is your heel bone. It's the single strongest, hardest bone in your entire body. So it impacts, it touches the ground over 10,000 times a day. So
my wife would say my head is the strongest.
Exactly.
So headstrong.
So, I believe it or not, with all the thrill-seeking adventures and things that I do, the one thing that got me was actually tripping on a staircase in my own home, which is actually what they say, which is most accidents occur in your own home. But anyway, so I shattered my calcaneus.
Oh my goodness.
Immediate reconstructive surgery, titanium pins, which are still in to this day. And that one event changed some of the trajectory of perhaps my personal inclinations, which...
How so? What do you mean by that? Let's pause there.
As you know, I tend to enjoy certain venture sports. I like skydiving. I racing motorcycles.
You're a thrill seeker. I mean, you love fast cars and high performance motorcycles. Exactly. Skiing.
Well, I appreciate those things. Yeah. I find them, kind of fascinating and intriguing.
Adrenaline.
Yeah, it's fun and.
Metallica concerts in Europe.
There you go.
Right?
I look like an accountant, but I fly off to Paris for a Metallica concert. Go figure. So. It really made me recalibrate a little bit. It made me recognize that, we're fragile beings. And when you reach a certain stage in your life, you think about things a little bit differently. There's a certain mortality, and it's the way that, I experienced that through my conversations with clients as well.
We're not invincible.
We're not invincible.
It's a shame. I wish, we all know this, but I wish it didn't take an event for us to really accept it.
Right.
I had my blood clot 8 years ago. I just run the Big Sur Marathon. I thought it was picture perfect health. I've never had a cigarette in my life. Ran 26 miles, and I mean, you already know the story, but a week later, I'm in the hospital for 11 days, and afterwards they told me I was in 50-50 mode for survival because I had a blood clot. We now know I'm genetically predisposed to blood clot. Why did it take that type of drama for me to try to just relax, not sweat the small stuff?
Right.
I still do sometimes. I'm a human being, but it definitely recalibrated me too. I don't know why it takes us something like falling and breaking our toughest bone in our body or
Right.
a blood clot to realize these things.
Well, I, for one, am grateful that you're better now.
Thank you, Dave.
Likewise.
Likewise.
It's interesting you say that, because that's one of the things I tell some of these clients. I tell them your wealth, it's not just a number that you're trying to amass, and then you get to some magic finish line, and then everything everything magically just fixes itself. Money's an interesting thing. It's not everything. Life isn't all about
So
money.
many unhappy, wealthy people in our lives.
But it certainly smooths out the rough edges. When you have resources, it can really smooth out things and get you access to good health care. But how that sort of goes back to what you were saying, these events that people go through that may change the trajectory of their life. We at my team, actually, we actively have these conversations, and we tell them, if you think you want to do something and you have more than sufficient means to do it, let's make it happen. Let's do it now.
Because life is short.
Life is
so to
short.
speak.
And,
Right.
Again, in 28 years, I've had clients that passed away at such early years. And I remember how hard they would just grind away and building these companies and, doing these things to amass wealth. And I have one particular client very recently, gentleman, unfortunately, he's been working really hard, building a beautiful portfolio, quite a wealthy individual, 2 young kids, and he passed away at age 56. And they had, I remember how many goals and dreams and things they had, when the children get to age 18, we're going to take a trip around the world. And, there are other factors maybe that kept that from happening.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we would encourage that people really pursue these things. If you have the means to do it,
That is such good advice. And not everyone has that type of wealth, and not everyone wants to travel around the world. But I guess the point is, whatever your big goal is.
Whatever it is, yeah. And
take the kids to Florida for the first time
That's
ever.
right, that's
or
right.
go to Disney World
Sure.
before it's too late and your kids get too old or something like that.
And those are the little things that, in addition to everything else that we do, that I really try to instill that in our clients in the conversations.
I love
which
that.
is it's more, it's not survival mode. It's aspirational, right?
We have to smell the roses.
Right.
We work so hard. I used to call on these ultra affluent individuals like the type you're describing in my old line of work when I was involved in a health organization.
Right.
And I would envy these folks, and I would get close to them, and at the end of a week or a month of getting to know them, maybe we'd have dinner together or have a cigar together. And I'd say, give me some advice, Dave. What advice would you give me to this 80-year-old? I'm a sponge around people like that. None of them said, I wish I did more deals.
Right.
None of them said, I wish I worked more. This sounds trite, but we all forget it.
Yeah.
And so I loved getting those reminders. The most common thing I heard, do you know what it was? What would you think? The most common was, I wish I spent more time with my kids.
Yeah,
and my
I was just going to
grandkids."
say.
Yeah.
I was going to say that.
And it's just like,
Yeah.
of course that's the answer.
Right.
But unfortunately, we forget quickly. We get back into the rat race.
Yeah.
Every month begins at 0. The treadmill continues indefinitely. It's insane.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the injury, your heel injury, helped remind you of some of these
Yeah,
things.
just
it sounds like.
recalibrate and
Yeah.
just remind me that I also should take heed of the things that
Right.
I talk about.
Practice what we
Yeah,
preach.
practice what we preach, exactly.
Let me switch gears a little bit. I think everyone admits that COVID has accelerated inevitable change in pretty much every category. How has technology changed, if at all, your industry? I know you changed firms. I'm sure involved in a lot of technology.
Right.
How has technology changed your industry?
Yeah, it's mind-numbing, the changes. Just
Keep it simple for me. I'm a very simple mind.
Everything is just. It's just like every industry now. Everything is just lightning speed. I remember when I first started in the business, I'd have to, if I did a transaction, we would write a ticket out, number of shares, count number, description, walk it over to a centralized location. There'd be a data entry person there. So, if we go in the context of a larger scale, I mean, automation has just been mind-boggling, but it just has sped up the volume of activity, the amount of
For the better, do you think?
well,
Overall,
I think there's a degree of overload. I mean,
too much information.
We handle so many things every day.
Right.
There's so many data sources coming in from different places. There's so many feeds. There's, between email, social media, cell phone, landline. I mean, all these things all converging simultaneously, and it's just a cacophony of activity. And sometimes I feel like even with my pretty large team, it's to some degree it can be overwhelming. Because people on the outside, they're seeing a lot of data, right? They're seeing things coming through on social media that might excite them or depress them or whatever the case is. Something about the market. Right. Reddit, that's a perfect example. But I'll give you the whole Reddit thing, the Robinhood Reddit, with some of these stocks, people are not everybody's making a ton of money on these things. And when these news stories come along, clients are inclined to call and say, hey, should we have some of this?
Yeah.
And we have to counsel them that, this is not exactly in the context of how it fits into a master plan. And frankly, a lot of these things are just, they're instantaneous, happens overnight.
You got to be diplomatically assertive.
Got to be diplomatically assertive. Yeah.
I interjected here because it's just shocking how fast the time goes. I have a few other topics I want to get to because I really want to pick your brain and your heart as much as we can.
Sure.
I'm always interested in knowing how successful people like you live such a fast-paced life, Dave. Are you a goal setter, or are you just always trying to do better, or do you set specific goals? And I don't even need to know what the goals are, but are you like a goal setter?
Yeah. I do tend to set goals for myself. And,
are they daily or monthly or annually or resolutions, or how do you do that?
Sometimes goals are imposed on you from others, right?
Somebody is being diplomatically assertive with you maybe in your life.
Exactly. But, I try to set hurdles and milestones and, set targets just for the purpose of creating that sort of that satisfaction, because again, when you in some occupations, there's no finite end to it. When you're
measure,
right, when you're managing capital and you're doing comprehensive asset management, folks, there's a number. There's always a number, right? It's the value of portfolios, the value of the assets we manage, all those other factors that industries look at. But at the end of the day, you may accomplish one goal, but all of a sudden there's a problem right behind it. So there's always something fresh.
How about on the
behind
personal side? Do you set personal goals?
Absolutely.
Whether it's like fitness or going somewhere? Or...
Yeah, I think that's so critically important for individuals just to keep themselves motivated and to just create benchmarks for yourself. And it's satisfying. It's good. It's a good feeling to be able to. One thing I always did is I write lists every day.
I'm such a list writer.
4:30, 5 o'clock, which is usually when I see a text from you. And you write your list for the day. And
it feels good crossing it out once it's done.
It feels so good to cross that off the list.
I have to admit, I will write something down even though I've already done it, just to have one more thing that I can cross my mind through. And no one's looking at the list. I'm not even showing my
it's
wife.
Just for yourself.
It's so silly,
at
but
the
it
end
does
of the
feel
day,
good.
it's just it's just something that sort of motivates you to keep moving forward. But
awesome.
Again, I've personally found, again, through that watch, learn, and listen sort of mantra, most successful people, if not the majority of the successful people that I've always observed, do exactly the same thing. They set targets. They have self-imposed sort of goals, and they write lists, or they type lists, or however they want to have that.
We're going to keep going with lightning round here.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm impressed with the team you've built.
Love my team.
And we have a lot of younger entrepreneurs who listen to the show, and they ask questions often, or they give feedback about how teams are built.
Right.
The good and the bad. How do you build a team?
Sure.
Are there certain qualities you look for in team building, or how do you even think about the team that you have already built, or if you need to hire the next person, how do you decide how to do that?
Yeah, no, this is probably my favorite question
so
good.
I'm glad we're getting to it.
Yeah, so if you start with if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, do it together.
Wait, say that again. That's great. I might be guilty of that right now.
Sure.
If you want to go fast, go by yourself.
Go
you
alone,
can just do it yourself. Yeah.
Right. But if you want to go far, do it together. Do it with somebody. Do it with a team.
Why have you never told me that before? That is awesome.
Yeah. Well, I didn't make it up, but
Wow.
it just resonates so perfectly.
Keep going.
With my team. So my team, I really think of them as family. They've been with me from the beginning. There's no me. Dave Ciccone didn't build anything.
Yeah, it's not called the Ciccone Group.
Right, CTH Group. The team is what really enabled us to achieve the success that we
What character
have.
traits do you look for?
Sure, yeah. So one of the things, what I always tried to do was create complementary dynamics. My original business partner, I call him my brother from another mother, just a brilliant guy. I literally have known him since the day he was born. Now, few people in business can actually say that they've known somebody since the day they were born.
So did he start working with you right then, or how much more time passed?
So he's been with me since the early days, about 98, 99, something.
I'm glad our producer caught my joke. Dave didn't even laugh at
Oh,
what
I didn't
just
catch the
said.
joke. I
You're
apologize.
so locked in.
Oh, sorry about that. I'm in the
Okay.
zone, baby. I like
basically
talking about my
I basically
team.
asked if you hired your teammate.
When he was born.
And you're like, well, not right away.
I thought I caught that, and I was trying to just go right over it.
Todd, our producer, thank you for affirming me with the joke.
It's good. Todd's having fun over there with it.
Yeah.
But one of the things is just using Tom as an example. We've never ever, in multiple decades, we have never had a debate, an argument, anything about money. We just have always just said, this is a team, we're going to build it together, and we share in whatever equal, 50-50.
So do you feel like that is because you have that complementary skill set that you previously mentioned? He's good at things you're not, and vice versa? Or it's just more like a synergy?
Well, as you said, for the youngsters, for those who are looking at building the team.
Right.
So, all of the members of my team, every one of them, I have a mechanical engineer, a little bit older, not much older, a little bit older. We speak 5 languages fluently, so we represent many different backgrounds. I have one of my partners comes out of the commercial real estate business, highly successful. So he knows the commercial real estate and lending business inside out. I have another partner. He wrote I'll give him a shameless plug. James wrote, best-selling book, Value Returns. I have it right next to me.
So diversity of backgrounds is important in building your team.
Diversity of backgrounds, complementary skill sets.
Okay.
The inclination to really look at the operation from the perspective of how do we serve the clients.
Multidisciplinary.
Right. Not arguing about money and revenue and all those elements that I think a lot of teams, it's why they ultimately break up, which is, maybe even why marriages break up. It's discussions about things that are not focused on the mission. And so when I built the team, I really just wanted complementary skill sets, the utmost integrity, and people that really care. And I just...
You've done it. I've met a lot of them, maybe all of them.
Yeah,
I think you've done
just
it.
can't be... I'm just so grateful for them, because I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for them. That's just a simple fact.
Well, I'm grateful for you being here. One last question before we have to wrap things up. I know how valuable your time is. What are you most looking forward to, Dave, post-pandemic? I know you said your lifestyle hasn't changed a ton.
Right.
But is there something you're really looking forward to when we get out of this China virus?
Sure. Oh my goodness. I can't wait. Honestly, I think we are about to experience something that we really haven't experienced in a long time.
What do you mean by that?
I just think that coincidental with springtime, which is that rebirth, that blossoming, that
New season.
new season, I think we are just about to experience something unbelievable. And I think it's going to be global.
I love how you say that. I when people ask me that question, I think about the entrepreneurs right now who are creating new systems to solve problems that we didn't even have before.
Right,
and we haven't
right.
heard about these new entrepreneurs yet and their new creative ideas, but
Sure.
they're being born right now.
Yeah, yeah. But imagine just being able to get out and see your friends and go to have dinner and, walk into a busy environment and be able to see other people and just
Hug people. How about hugging people?
How about just seeing people smile, for God's
Right,
sakes?
seeing their faces.
I walk through go through a store and I'm wearing a baseball cap and a mask, and the reality is that other people are too. And it's really interesting how you lose that sense of sort of the acknowledgement, perhaps, and just understanding what somebody's sentiment is when they say something, when you can't see all the facial gestures.
For sure.
It's almost like when you text, you really don't necessarily always get the
And
full
we're not
context.
in person. All the
Right.
Zoom calls or
Right.
the Teams
Right.
calls, you're an empathetic fella, but empathy is harder when
Right.
we're not in person. The
Yeah.
digital versions of ourselves are not as empathetic as the in-person versions.
Yeah, I think it's going to be like global Woodstock.
Oh,
you
right.
know, I mean, on the social side, I think people are just absolutely itching to get out and do things. I've only seen in the capital markets and the economy and things I've only seen maybe twice in my entire career. In 28 years, I've only seen a synchronized global expansion twice. And they last for a little while, and they're quite robust, and they lead to amazing things in the capital markets. But I think just on both sides, on the social side and on the business side, I think we're just about to see and witness something that's just going to be magnificent.
I love this as our closing comments. I mean, you're leaving us with a really positive optimism to think about. So, Dave, thank you so much for coming
Adam.
today. It's, again, remarkably quick when we get into these conversations, and I'm sad that the time is concluding, but hopefully we'll invite you back. But in the meantime,
I hope so.
Congrats on all your success.
Thank you, Adam.
This show is about leaders who are as humble as they are successful, and your humility came out in so many ways today.
Thank you so much, Adam. It's truly a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Up2 podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe via your podcast platform of choice. To receive our newsletter, suggest speakers, and give your candid feedback, please email Adam directly at adam@up2foundation.org. We would love to hear from you. The Up2 podcast is produced by the BL Media Group right outside of the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. See you next time.